Nice little group. I see John is getting the last of the dollars. I'm learning some of the new kids' names slowly. Bud's got a name tag. You're the only one I don't need a name tag for. There you go. Okay, sit right here next to Jenny. It's fine. I'm going to tell you a cool story. You're going to like it. Okay. I'm not a very good salesperson, am I? Didn't win. Glad you guys came up, though. Okay, very good. All right. Glad to see you guys today. And a little unusual that we had primaries and juniors together today. And we played Bible bingo, so we had a good time. But that means one of our teachers was out today, not well, I'm sure. So please pray for whichever primary teacher was supposed to be here. And today is Youth Sabbath. For those of you who are new, yay, he came back. For those of you who are new and who are able and willing, I know he's sitting in the back row, but on the 5th Sabbath of the month, we have Youth Sabbath, where everybody helps me have the church service. So we can have you guys help next time. All right. Who likes to go to the beach? Anybody? Everybody likes to go to the beach. What's some of your favorite things at the beach? What do you like? What do you like? Yeah. What do you like at the beach? Anything? The smell of the ocean. What? The waves. What?
I like the sand in my toes.
Yes, the sand in your toes. That's very important. Okay. Shells. Okay. Surfing.
Seeing sea turtles.
Seeing sea turtles. That would be cool. Okay. So there's lots of fun things to do at the beach. Even if you're just there and you're sitting in the sand and building a sandcastle, it's lots of fun. But I'm going to tell you a story. It's called Trouble at the Beach. Ivy and her little brother Eddie had just arrived at the beach, and they were down there for the first time. So they get to see all the beautiful ocean, hear the sounds and the birds going, ah, 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 okay? So they get to hear all that stuff. And they should have been very happy to be at the beach. But do you think they were? No. No, they were in a terrible mood. They quarreled and fought and grumbled about everything. Mom had bought them 2 sand shovels, you know, little shovels that you use. One was red and one was green. Do you think that they could just play with each one getting one? No, both of them wanted the red one. That's right.
Johnny went to Dollar Tree and John got a green one and I got a red one.
See, so this story could be about you. Okay, so they fought for the red one, and even though the green one was just as good. One new bucket, sand bucket, had a little dent in the side. Do you think they would use it? No. No, they hated that one. So they fought over the other one that didn't have the dent in it. And then when they started to dig, they both wanted to dig in the same exact spot. So they started fighting. I started to dig here first, said Ivy. No, you didn't. I did, said Eddie. So then he jumped in the middle of the castle that Ivy had started to build. You're a horrid little thing, said Ivy. And then they started to chase each other round and round and round the beach chairs until Eddie fell down, and then Ivy fell down, and there was a terrible squabble and scramble. And at last, both stood up crying as hard as they could. Well, you both look happy, said Mother, walking up to them. If this is how you're going to enjoy the beach, maybe we should go home. You ever had your mama say that? Yeah. It was her fault, said Eddie. No, it wasn't. It was his, said Ivy. He jumped on my castle. She was digging where I wanted to dig, said Eddie as he pointed to his bucket. And he's got the bucket and spade that I wanted, said Ivy. Oh dear, said Mother. Why did I bring you to the beach? Do you know what you look like? You look like two bad little hobgoblins. I'm not a hobble-gobble, said Eddie, between his sighs. Well, you ought to see yourself in a mirror. It's terrible behaving the way you are on a beautiful summer day. You should be smiling and happy and enjoying yourself. Suppose you were to stay looking the way you look right now. Wouldn't it be terrible? But he shouldn't have jumped on my, oh, Ivy, do be quiet, said Mother. And so let's go over here. I'm going to show you something. So they grumbled the whole way, and they didn't notice that Mama was taking them to a so-called House of Smiles, outside of which stood a mirror that was distorted. Have you ever seen a distorted mirror? Usually mirrors are straight, but these are wavy, and you look really funny. I wish I had one. Sorry. But you look really funny in this mirror. Now look at yourselves and see what other people see when they look at you, said Mother. They looked, and what a sight they saw. Two weird-looking little creatures with long, tear-stained faces, long legs, and short, fat bellies. Of course, they couldn't keep miserable any longer. At last, a smile broke across Ivy's face, and another went rippling around Eddie's. Then they started laughing. It was music to Mama's ears. We did look like hobble-gobbles, didn't we? Said Eddie. You did, said Mother. And mind, every time you quarrel or cry after this, I'm going to send you to look in this mirror. At which they all laughed again and ran back to make a new start to their beach visit. We can choose to have fun, can't we? We can choose to get along with people. So let's choose to be happy. I would like to give you, this is courtesy of Corrine, who gave us some beach treasures. So don't look, just reach in and pick one, and you can take it home. But if I catch you throwing them at each other, then we're going to have an issue, okay? All right. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Okay? And this is something that you would find if you went. They're all different. They're not the same. There you go. Oh, you got a curly key. Oh, there you go. Do you know what lives in these things?
What?
Little clams and things. That one, I think little hermit crabs will live in. There you go. Okay. Can you find one? Very good. Okay. All right. That's for you to take home. All right. Let's bow our heads real quick for a little word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all the beauty you give us every day to enjoy, and that we can see your handiwork, and that we can remember that you love us and care for us very much. Help us to take care of the earth that you've given us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. And go back to your seats now.
Happy Sabbath, everyone.
"'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, and to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him. How I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus. Oh, for grace to trust him more. Yes, 'tis sweet to trust in Jesus. Just from sin and self to cease. Just from Jesus simply taking life in rest, joy and peace. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him. How I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus. Oh, for grace to trust him more. I'm so glad I've learned to trust thee. Precious Jesus, Savior, friend. And I know that thou art with me. Will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him. How I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus. Oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, for grace to trust him more.
I was extremely blessed by that. Just encouraged that as the service goes on today, that we can trust in Jesus. He's in charge of everything. I don't stand behind the pulpit. So I'm just getting a little bit of room here. I'm also probably putting those upstairs in all kind of shock now because we don't have the follow me cameras that follow you everywhere. Now I brought a chair in here and somebody's moved it because I don't know where the would you check out the lobby, please? The one that and the reason I want the chair is I just am overcoming COVID. I'm out of the quarantine period for the last 2 days. They tell me if I'm not within 6 feet of somebody, I can remove my mask. So, and then I'm not going to be shaking hands with a lot of people today and everything up here. But, so at the end of the service, if you want to come up here and shake my hand, and if you feel comfortable, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm not going to proceed out to the lobby afterwards. Let's open with a word of prayer. Father, we are so thankful that you brought all of us here together today. It's so good to see each other's faces and to hear their voices and to see the smiles and hear the singing that's going up to your courts of heaven and knowing that they're ringing and resonating there with all the other congregations around the world that are celebrating your precious Sabbath day. We pray now that you'll bless in everything that's done here. May it only be done and said in accordance to your will. Amen. Now, there are a couple of things I want to kind of lay on this groundwork here as much as anything else. Yes, Mary, I did sit next to you last week, and one of the conversations he and I got in was, do you ever preach? And what did I tell you, Larry? I never do. So be careful when the Lord taps you on the shoulder, because this is only the third time I've even spoken here. I don't call this a sermon. It's just a message. It's going to be part of my story. You can't tell 76 years of story in X number of minutes. And I think the reason I told Larry, I'm sure it was, I don't know if he recalls or not, the reason I told him I don't preach is I can't say it in 30 minutes. And I'm going to try today to get you out here somewhat close to that. And I've also been given a couple of other warnings or suggestions by those that know me. They said, first thing, John, is don't tell any jokes. Well, I was going to start out telling you that I was born at a very early age. But I won't say that. And then the other thing is, they said, don't tell any stories, because you never can remember the punchline to them. So we're going to begin with a story. I'm on dangerous ground, in other words, but we're on holy ground today. What I want to do is I want to share with you some of the experiences of my life, and this is not a selfish story, it's a story I hope that gives you encouragement along the way, that have been defining points that I can know that God has led me where I am right now today. And I'm going to say somebody changed the slide, but I guess I should do that. Now, normally, whenever I'm doing something, most of you, some of you have probably been able to go online and see Firefly Ministry. And normally if I do a recording, I'm really recording for 4 different presentations. So that little 5-minute segment that you might see takes 60 to 80 takes. I don't have 60 to 80 takes to do this today. And that's just one of the takes that you're going to see. I'm there working on a new closing and opening for Firefly Ministry to reflect more of the environment that we're living in now. And I looked all over my slide files to find out how to show you how the rest of it is done. But on usually Wednesday nights, the pastor, sometimes on Wednesday, sends me his manuscript for the service on Sabbath. I read the service, the manuscript, and then go home from work at Lowe's. I usually get off at 9. And then Wednesday night, spend several hours writing 4 scripts for the preview, the prologue, the epilogue, and now we're putting a new one together that summarizes it all so we can use these as short messages later on, independent of the sermon. And so then that finishes early dark 30, and then get up Thursday morning, spend a few hours recording. But the way the recording is done, my kitchen is then turned into a green screen studio with green screen, stage light, microphones, and all the other kind of things around, and camera. And I searched my entire file. I know I've got hundreds of pictures of that, but I searched my entire disk drive this week, couldn't find a single one of them. So I know the Lord didn't want me to show you that bad part. But just understand that the pastor is doing a coordination to get it so that we can actually be presenting it to those that are looking online today, so that they can have a preview of what's going on, as well as the introduction, and to be part of our worship service today. So in light of that, again, think, what would I want to share today? And I'm going to start off with a story about a young man, probably back in, if I remember correctly, the story goes that it was around 1974 to 76, sometime in that time frame. He was in the Atlanta airport flying to New York, and he was in the bar. And that was the usual place that he hung out between flights or making a flight or whatever else. And he noticed a beautiful young lady, or what to him, at that time was an attractive young lady that walked in. She sat down by herself. They were close and near each other, and so they had about an hour or so before the flight, and they struck up a conversation. And the conversation that she engaged in with him was something like about a play that was playing in New York. She found out he was going to New York. She had just returned from New York and was on her way to Dallas, Texas, through Atlanta. And so she said, I want you to make me a promise. Now, this guy, as I know him, doesn't keep his promises very well. But he was, after all, he was talking to a beautiful young lady, and she said, I want you to call me the night that you go see this play. Now, his mind starts clicking. I get a phone number. I've got somebody in Dallas that I know now that I can go visit. So he takes the phone number and promises to call her. And so on his agenda, when he gets to New York, what is one of the first things he tries to do? Is to go find that play. And so he goes to find the play. He goes to it, and I'm going to talk about the play a little bit later. He calls her that night, talks to her, and never talks to her again. We're going to pause that story. Hi, my name is John Robinson. And I want to give you another story, kind of where my story starts. I was born 76 years ago to what, even in today's standards, would be a very poor home. We lived in the projects. My mother worked in a school cafeteria, and so frequently our dinners were made up from the lunches that were brought over from home from the cafeteria. And as often as not, there was already a bite taken out of the roll. We just ate around the bite. And whatever else was there. But we didn't know we were poor. And gradually, my dad's job improved. He worked at the Naval Air Station. He was an airframe mechanic for the Blue Angels. And he improved in his employment and everything there. And we were able to buy some property near where his parents had lived first, and then we moved out into the country. I had 20 acres out there and some other things, but along the way, our life improved. And my sister and my brother and I were extremely close. I had two siblings from my dad's current marriage. He had already been married once before. I had an older sister, Gail, who is just a wonderfully beautiful lady. And then I now have also, from his most recent marriage before he passed, I have four other siblings that are, Gail is probably in her 80s, and my younger siblings are in their 30s. And so I've got a wide range in there. But the three of us, Donna, Bill, and I, were extremely close. That is, until divorce came into the family. My mother married my dad at 13 years old. She was a child. She never grew up. She never had the opportunity to learn the things that you're learning, Brianna, and just in life, or the things that you guys on the middle row there are learning just in life. She was an instant mother. At 32, I was half as old as she was. So somewhere around 25 or 26, life caught up with her from the standpoint of there were things that she needed to know, things that she needed to see. We had been going to church. My dad had become an Adventist when he was quite young, had been out of the church for a number of years, and then after Donna, Bill, and I were born, he started going back to church. Mother became very active in church, and we as children were very active in the church. But there was a part that was in Mother's heart that needed something else, that was looking for something else. And I will have to admit that my dad's personality, just like mine, was not the most lovely. And so from the standpoint of understanding that, you have to understand it. But I remember being taken on extramarital dates with my mother. to other events that might have been happening, just a rendezvous to meet up with someone that I later learned were people that she, after the divorce, had more serious relationships with. Divorce came. I was in about the 7th grade. That made my sister about the 8th or 9th grade and my brother about the 5th grade. And as I said, we were very, very close. My brother went with my mother. I went with my father. My sister went with my grandparents. And we were split apart. And we've been apart, and we stayed apart for numbers of years, 10s and 20s of years. There's been a 10-year period of time which I've never spoken to either one of them. Now, as I've gotten older, my sister and I have become much closer, but my brother just always stayed out. There were a lot of struggles. He was a oil rig foreman for the oil rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico, and over in Nigeria, he developed typhoid fever and all the other kind of fevers and everything, had serious health problems, and he died this past year. But my sister and I have started becoming much closer together. My sister dropped out of the church. My brother dropped out of the church, but my sister is a very godly young lady, and she's even told me most recently that she still knows that the Sabbath is the Sabbath. And so we went through that struggles. I remember the last time I ever saw my mother. Alcoholism ran very, very deep in my family. It was a struggle that not only immediate. I had an aunt that died as an alcoholic. I had other uncles and grandparents that suffered the same afflictions. And I promise you, they never started out thinking that was going to be their fate. And so I remember the last time I saw my mother, she was on her knees, but she wasn't praying. She was trying to crawl to the bedroom. And so there are a lot of things that I still have inside that I could tell you. I want to say two things here. First, nothing that I want to say do I want to give glory to the devil. Absolutely nothing. And the other thing is that regardless to the salvation that has been given to you, there are still scars that you carry the rest of your life. Now that's the first part of my life. Now let's go back to the airport. I was the young man sitting there at the bar, recently left his wife. I was a terrible husband. And Kim may even say I'm a terrible husband now. But I had a wonderful wife. Elaine's her name. And we are very, very close friends. Not because of anything that I've done. It's because of the forgiveness she has given. And she and Kim are very, very close. And it's because of their ability to forgive together. You can't go back and undo the scars that are there. But you can certainly use the love of Jesus in your life to heal over those scars and do everything that's possible. And so I left her with a young child and just decided that I wanted to find life my way. Now I'm going to kind of take a little pause here and talk about one other thing. So what was the play the young lady wanted me to go see in New York? I probably have most of it memorized because I've probably been to that play 5 or 6 times in my life. I probably have bought 50 tickets for my closest friends, including my ex-wife, to go see it. Because it was really the beginning of, it was the story of where I was beginning. I didn't know it at the time. The name of the story is Pippin. Now, Pippin was a real person, a real live person. He was better known by history as Pippin the Hunchback. He was the son of Charlemagne. Now, The story is obviously, Pippin is glamorized in the story, so I don't think they tried to show him as a hunchback. Nowhere in the play did I see him anything as a hunchback, but I saw him as a young man trying to find his place in life. And there are a couple of songs in there that I just want to read you some of the lyrics from. It starts out in the opening with a song called My Corner of the Sky. And here's the first 2 or 3 lines from it. Everything has its season. Everything has its time. Show me a reason and I'll show you a rhyme. Cats fit on the windowsill. Children fit in the snow. Why do I feel I don't fit in anywhere I go? And that was the very first line, the first of lines that greeted me in there. But that's where I was in my heart. I graduated from Southern Adventist University with a theology major. But I've very quickly realized I'm not to go just preach every day, Larry. I'm not to preach every weekend. That's not who I am. That's not what I can do. I'm not, number one, compassionate enough. At that time, I was the most selfish person in the world. It was all about me. And I wanted to be everything that I could get. And I had a lot of lessons to learn. And the Lord knew that I shouldn't be a preacher. Even though I was going through the training and everything else, the Lord said, and I didn't get a single call, but I didn't want to call. I was devoted to the radio station and some of the other things and film and what have you at school. But yet, I got a theology major with minors in math and history, and chief engineer at the radio station and director of broadcasting for the station, student director. But after the call, senior year, I was drafted in the Army on a motion picture crew out at Fort Sam Houston at Fort Ord, Texas, to an advance film team that was doing films on advanced weapons systems. We had the best equipment in the world. And I was sent there, and guess what? Nobody knew how to run it. I arrived there on a Friday afternoon. My commanding officer said, well, we've got a film we need to work on, and I don't know what we're going to do. On Tuesday, the general's going to be in here to watch it. I didn't know how any of this stuff worked, never seen it before. This is real motion picture stuff. This is not just little things that I had in a lab somewhere. But I told him, it was a brand new studio, never been used by anybody. I said, if you'll give me the key, I'll come in Saturday night, and on Monday morning, you'll have your film. And so I got in there Saturday night and realized they had wired the whole place wrong. So I had to with their gangs of projectors or film recorders that are all in synchronization. They all have to run together because they're all synchronized soundtracks and everything. They weren't synchronizing or anything. So obviously the people that put it in really didn't understand anything except what the instruction book said. So halfway through Sunday morning, I got it all rewired, and now it was time to put the film together. It was done on Monday morning, and the general liked it, except I learned one thing, and this is something that stayed with me. So young people or older people, if you've got a boss to please or something else, it's what I call the role of the critic. If you ask somebody, what do you think about this, they're going to try to tell you what's wrong with it, not what's right with it. And so the general, I learned that he was going to look for the mistake. So I learned this general, that he was always the one that reviewed it. I put a mistake in the film early, just so that he would find his mistake and sleep the rest of the film. I would have a 5th Army patch and be talking about the 6th Army all the time. And he'd say, no, you got the wrong patch there. Yes, sir, you're absolutely right. He'd sleep the rest of the film. If I didn't have the mistake there, he was going to find his mistake because he had to be smarter than we were. So that's something that I frequently look at all the time, is make your boss look good. So, and then it goes on to, in this song, it says, rivers belong where they can ramble. And this is a theme that goes throughout the play. Rivers belong where they can ramble. Eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free. I've got to have my corner of the sky. And so that was really what I was looking at as I came along and went through the divorce, and after I got out of the Army, I went back to Southern and was on the instructional staff there for 1 year, teaching speech and film, and then started a film productions company. And then that's when I really started going out to the bars and doing all the other kinds of things, and then decided to leave my wife over Christmas. Sent her home to Florida. And there are a lot of things, by the way, that I'm going to leave out because, number one, it hurts me so much to say them. And it hurts me so much to realize how much I've hurt. And those are bells you can't unring. And even though at that time I remember thinking, I don't care what the consequences are, I want this. And I would continue on in that vein. And then as I wound up leaving her, then I had the film company, and then we took and we were good. We won the equivalent to an Oscar in the advertising field for some commercials that we had done. But, you know, people didn't want to pay for it. You know, they wanted good stuff, but they weren't willing to pay. You know, Picasso couldn't charge by the hour, I guess, or whatever. But it was difficult to make that struggle. So I decided, I told my partner, I said, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go out to figure out how do you sell this stuff. And so I decided I was going to get a job in sales and marketing. And the plan was to come back and be the marketing development around our film company. But got out there and started making good money, having good success, liking what I was doing. I started with a little company called Lanier Business Products, selling dictation equipment and the first word processors before word processors were anything, selling word processors. After that, I left and went to a company called Ashton Tate, which was a database 4 and the early database applications that were put out there, and then they were bought by Oracle. And so I left there and then went over to another company, and to help take them public at that time, became their vice president of sales, and we were doing voice recognition products, mostly in every time you get a phone call that says, and it's one of those dialers on the phone, we invented those. Thank you very much. But we were the pioneers in that field. Left that and went to a video conferencing company. Went to China. The interesting part about China, I was the vice president of sales and marketing there, and we were trying to sell them some of our video technology to the Chinese government. And you know when you're really, and I'm not proud of this, but it's just naive, it was all about money. And at that time, you know when you are really with somebody connected. Pause. Philip, can you pull me down a second? I need to clear my throat. People at home will appreciate that. But you know when you are with somebody that has some clout, when you're about 30 miles outside of the city, and you have a 6 o'clock appointment with the provincial head of the Chinese Communist Party, and there is a road blockage from there 30 miles back to the city. Lei Shu, who was our employee here in the States, also her uncle happened to be the chairman of the party there, went out, left us in a limo, not speaking any Chinese at all, to find a solution. And we thought, oh, we're in trouble now. And she comes back, and suddenly a guard opens up a clearing to the other side of the road that normally would be coming this way, no traffic coming. They had stopped the traffic for the next 30 miles for us to have a clear shot back so that we can make our 6 o'clock meeting. Now, we were about 30 minutes late there, so the way the Chinese culture works is that the least important person comes in first, then the next most important person, then the next most important person, until finally the chief person, after everyone has arrived, arrives at the ceremony. And so it took a little while to get everybody into the situation. So after the video conferencing company, then I decided that I was going to start my own company, and went with 4 individuals, and we became part of had a technology, voice recognition technology, that Georgia Tech took an interest in. And they became interested in some of the things that we're doing, and they have what they call a business incubator. It's called Georgia Center for Advanced Telecommunications Technology off of the campus at Georgia Tech. They invited us to come rent-free, have space there just to develop our product, could have the space there for 2 years, and at the end of the 2 years, then we could, the design was to get investors and to go out and to become self-sustaining and to make it a commercially viable product. So we did that. We went out. We raised $20 million in venture capital and some other things. And by all stretches of the imagination, great success. But I was getting drunk every single night. Part of the responsibilities that I had as the Vice President of Sales and Marketing was to take the various men that came into Atlanta to some places that you just don't want to go. And to do things and to approve of things that I can't unring those bells. It was not uncommon to spend a couple of $1,000s in an evening just on 6 guys. But we were doing multi-million-dollar contracts. And were, by all stretches of the imagination, successful, except when I got home, I would drink 2 and 3 bottles of wine a night. That's all I drank was wine. But, well, I can't say that's all. That's what I drank was wine. And that was because there was something inside me still missing. I was running away. I had decided when I left my film company, when I left Collegedale, when I left my wife, I had decided that if I can do this without God, I am going to do it without God. And for all those 20-some-odd years, I was out there trying to figure out how do you do it without God. And by all other measurements, doing pretty good. My first customer that we sold our voice recognition software was Dell Computer, multi-million-dollar contract. Second one, AT&T, multi-million-dollar contract. Third one, now some of you won't even know what this is about, America Online. You Got Mail, you know, that whole movie and everything. That was our third one. And now they don't even exist. But we were working on those kind of projects, very, very large projects, large installations and everything else. So by all stretches of the imagination, being successful, except there was still something missing in here. And I almost remember, I remember the event, I don't remember the date, but you recognize right now that frequently if something moves my heart, it moves my eyes at the same time. I was doing a presentation to our employees, and we had about 150 employees at the time. I was doing a presentation to our employees, and at a certain point, I can remember what I was talking about. It was talking about having the privilege to do certain things. At a certain point, tears came to my eyes. Had never done that before. Nothing had ever caused me to do that before. And at that point, I see now that I'm beside of it. I see some of the changes that were starting to take place there inside. I felt empty. I felt alone. I was a terrible husband. I mean, Kim and I were both very successful in our work. We didn't need each other. And that's the way the devil wants us to be today in the world, the business world and everything else. And that's why we see so many powerful companies, couples separating. It's because they don't need each other. They need what they've got. They need what they've got. They don't need what they've got. And so he was in the process of driving us apart. But Kim had a very loving mother that happened to come live with us downstairs from Chattanooga, lived with us in Atlanta. And her mother prayed for me. And her mother went to church. And her mother had Kim going to church. And they were praying that I would someday go to church. And then 9/11 happened, and I decided that, there's something to what the Bible talks about. I just couldn't close my eyes any longer. There's something to what I had been taught as a child. And I was starting to recognize it. And so I was waking up at the time that it happened from a hard night before. And Kim happened to be up in, I don't remember what city she was way out of town. Had to hitchhike essentially all the way back to Atlanta. But I knew something had happened. Now, it took a while longer for that to clear up, but the path started. Then I remember being in a hotel room one night, and I said this to God. I said, God, I'm too important to this company for you to do anything to them. I know you want to do stuff to me, but you don't want to hurt them. I'm too important because, after all, I started a company, and I was senior vice president and all that kind of good stuff, and had a patent and some other things. And it wasn't long after that that the venture capitalist said, we want to change management. And so I was out. And so things went on from there, and I thought, well, I don't want to start a company that I have to be accountable to anybody else. So I'm going to go look and develop 5 criteria that I wanted on the next thing I did. And I was going to definitely start a company. And so I set some criteria up. Sabbath was never a criteria. Keeping the Sabbath was the furthest thing from my mind at this time. And I looked at dozens of business opportunities. And I even had a business broker call me, and she said, John, I've got a business opportunity I want you to look at. And she said, it's commercial sign companies. And I said, that's the last thing I would do as a commercial sign company. And I said, no. And then I got to thinking about it. I said, well, and I called her back later, and I said, here's what I'm thinking. I know this isn't what I want to do, but I want to know what the process is for evaluation. So I don't have to get stuck here trying to decide, do I want to do this or not? Let me establish what kinds of things do you go through to evaluate a business. And the very minute I walked into the presentation, it was actually at a shop. I looked around, and Kim was with me, and I looked at her and I said, you know, I could probably do this. And the reason is that then what some of the criteria that I'd come up with is I want to know every one of my customers. I don't want to have somebody else know them. I want to be small enough that I know every person that works with me or works for me or supplies to me. And I said I want to be a business that has a repeat of business, a repeat opportunity, not just a one-off, you sell it and you're gone. Something that you have a relationship with. And something that I could be successful at. And by the way, it has graphics, and I love graphic arts and all the other kinds of things that are there, and it builds big stuff. You know, these were the kinds of Little Caesar signs, or the signs out here on the road, or the big monument signs you see on the sides of streets. The big projects and project management and all those kinds of things. And so Kim and I started a commercial sign business. And then in the process, if you've ever noticed, commercial sign businesses aren't open on Sabbath. They're all open Monday through Friday. They're closed on the weekends. And every other business opportunity I looked at required Sabbath work. But it wasn't one of my criterias. But the Lord knew what my criteria was and led me to that specific opportunity. And so we started the company and went from there. Shortly after 9/11, I started back going to the church in Duluth. Yes, person in the sound room, it is Duluth that I was going to. And I said, well, I'm going to go to church, but I just don't want to walk into church and have people talk to me. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to go to church. And so I would wait. I looked, and I knew what time from the website, what time church started. And there was a funeral home across the street from the church. And this is kind of irony, I would go sit in the parking lot of the funeral home until church started, and then I would go to church. And then when the closing song started, I left. And it took a while, and then after that, and this is the part, there are parts of this ordeal that nobody knows about. There are parts that happened after that that only me and God know about. But there were things that were still happening in my life. And so gradually, I went for Sabbath school. And Larry, I'm going to pick on you for a second. I sat where Larry sits in a much larger church every Sabbath. And I'd get up and leave when the closing song was there. And then finally, at a certain point in Sabbath school, I realized that, you know, I'll never get connected sitting in this room. I've got to find a small group to be in. So I found a small class somewhere. And after about 3 weeks, they said, would you team teach with us? And so we team taught together. In the process, I was rebaptized for the third time. And then eventually they said, well, would you teach our adult Sabbath school in the sanctuary? And I said, I'll try. And I called that my 5 loaves and 2 fishes class, because I would start with only about 10 or 12 like we did today, and at the end of the class there would be 200 in there, because you know how people just come in, and they come in. And I never knew when it grew. It just happened. But I would always tell them in that large class there, I said, if you are in this class more than 3 times, you're in the wrong class. This is the visitor's class. The real class are in the small classes outside of the sanctuary, where you can get connected to each other, where you can get to know each other, where you can develop a relationship with each other and understanding what's going on in each other's life. And I said, I'm not going to point to a seat, although I pointed to you a while ago, Larry. I said, I'm not going to point to a seat right now in the sanctuary, but somebody is sitting in my seat, and I know why you're sitting there. And then after one class, I went up to a young man after the class, and I just said, what's your name? And he told me. And he said, I'm in your seat, aren't I? I said, yeah. I said, you want to come home for lunch? And so Kim and I took him home for lunch. So that was part of the struggle along the way. I'm going to share a couple other songs here with you, and then we're going to wrap up. I overheard a conversation from that Jimmy Self was having with David Zollinger last week. And it's such a true conversation. I happened to walk up at just the moment that David was saying, you know, the thoughts that you have over and over and over, they're creating creases in your mind. They're creating creases in your mind. And then began to think of myself, all of those things that I have done all of my life, all of those bad activities, all of those things that I can't unring the bells, I can't unsee the sights. There's creases in my mind that still present struggle. I think of times when I was a young child being warned, be careful about this because, nah. Now I understand what those creases are in my mind. If you'll go out and look at a hillside sometime and you see alongside the road where they put all these rocks in there, it's to keep the rain from going in and making those creases, making those creases, and making those creases. And the devil is doing so much he can in our lives to just put those creases of sin, those creases of guilt. Even though I am forgiven all my sins, I still have the scars. The lives that I hurt have the scars. The son that committed suicide is a scar. And I think of all those employees that I had. Every employee that I knew in my company, I knew who was a Muslim. I knew who was a Mormon. Or I knew who was a Church of God. Or who was a Baptist. At no time for my 20-some-odd years, 25, 30 years out there, did I ever meet knowingly a Seventh-day Adventist. Nobody ever confessed to me that they were a Seventh-day Adventist. Now, I may have never met one, but I sure met a lot of Mormons, and I sure met a lot of Baptists, And I sure met a lot of Muslims. We had 2 or 3 work in our organization, and we had the prayer room for them, and all of the respect that went along with them, and all of the other things. But I never met someone that really believed. Now, one other thing I want to warn about here. As I was leaving the church at Southern, and I had left the fellowship there, one of the faculty came to me. And this is something that's important. Only one faculty came to me. I was a theology major. Knew everyone in the ministerial staff there from a theology standpoint. One faculty, non-theology oriented, came to me and he said, "John, I'm not going to let you go." That was the only conversation we ever had. Now, it was probably my fault that he wasn't able to keep his word, and at that time I didn't want him to keep his word, and the Lord knew that that probably was not the situation and everything. But the fact is, we need to be deliberate about those that we love and those that we care for. Now I'm going to move on here. The thing that really, a couple other lines in the play that come out. It says, "You look frenzied, you look frazzled." And then there's another line here, "Peak up as any Alp, flushed, rushed, and razzle-dazzled. Dry your lips, dampen your scalp. Now I can see you're in a rut, you're in disarray." And then it goes on to say, "Don't look blue, don't look back. You'll pull through in just a while because you're on the right track." And so I had, in my life, had finally reached the place that Pippin in the play had reached, that he had realized that he had tried all kinds of love. He had tried all kind of romance. He had tried power and fame and everything else. And there are all kind of promises of that to him. After all, he's the son of Charlemagne, and even kills his father. However, in the play, his father comes back to life after he realizes that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that, because he thought he could do it better than his dad. And then he realized after he had the opportunity, nope, I'm just as bad as he was at it. And then, as in all good plays, excuse me. Well, this is kind of, as a young person, where you think your life is headed. It says, patching the roof and pitching the hay. That's not exactly my idea of a perfect day, especially when you're extraordinary like me. I'm not the type who loses sleep over the size of the compost heap. When you're extraordinary, you think you want to do extraordinary things like me. Oh, it's hard to feel special. It's hard to feel big, feeding the turtle and walking the pig. And so that, in my own life, that's what I was looking for. What is it that I'm supposed to do? I know I'm not here just to exist. What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And that's what I was looking for. And God knew that I was looking for it. And he understood that, John, I can't make you do this, but I know the heart that you have in you. And then he goes on, he finally falls in love, and they talk about love kinds of things. And then I want to come to the closing song. I may just have to recite it. Then the finale. And this is where I am in my life now. And it starts out, "Think of your life, Pippin, days of tame and nights the same." And there's the characters in the play were the first Broadway cast that starred in Pippin. There was Jill Claiborne, John Rubenstein, Ben Vereen, and Agnes Moorehead. This was in the 1973-ish cast out there. To some of the eyes out there, they're just glazed over. I don't know who in the world those people are, but they were very big at their time and all went on to be very successful actors and actresses. And Ben Vereen is essentially the character of the devil here. He says, I'm going to promise you everything. Look at it. Look how bright and shiny it is. And in this case, just as a symbol here, they said, look at the sun, Pippin. You can shine as bright as that sun. You can have as much glory as that sun has. Think about the sun, Pippin. Think about your life. Think about the dreams that you plan. Think about that moment. That's so close at hand. If you'll just do what I want you to do here, Pippin. That's where I was in my life. I was at a point to where I had to make a decision. Am I going to move forward where I am, or am I going to admit what the final line of the song says here? And then it says, think about your life, Pippin. Think about those dreams you've planned. Think about this moment that's so close at hand. When the power and the glory, it's all at your command. And remember how the the play starts out, rivers belong where they can ramble, eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free, not tied down. I've got to have my corner of the sky. Here's where his full life circle comes to be. This is where my full life circle came. He sings, rivers belong where they can ramble, eagles belong where they can fly. And then suddenly there's silence. I'm not a river or a giant bird that soars to the sea. And if I'm never tied to anything, I'll never be free. I wanted magic shows and miracles, mirages to touch. I wanted such a little thing from life. I wanted so much. I never came close, my love. He's singing this to the young lady that he fell in love with. We never came near. It was never there. I think it was here. And that's what I finally realized in my life. It's not out there. And this is why this is my favorite Bible verse. Because I understand where I started. So the Bible verse says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. Don't even begin going down that path. Those creases in your mind are there. And while God gives you a new heart and creates within you a new mind and a new spirit, the scars are still there. The lives that are ruined, the opportunities that were there can't be undone. Now, the Lord had other people and other opportunities and other things to take care of that. But there's so much. If I had realized this as a man of 26, I wouldn't be an old man at 76 here giving you this story. I would be giving you his story in a much more full fashion. And then when I talk about don't even begin walking down there, and if you do walk by something that you unintentionally did, don't stand and pay attention to it. Don't give it the time that the devil has put in front of you for it. Because if you do, you're going to wind up sitting there. You're going to wind up staying there much, much longer until you're to the place where the old man John Robinson was, with all those creases and with all those scars and with all those still desires. And my desire still is to go out and to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ wherever I can, whenever I can. And that's what our mission is here. Let's bow our heads. Father, just thank you for this opportunity to have chatted today. We pray now that you, as we do our closing song, that you will move on the hearts of individuals. This is my personal story. We all have a personal story. I want to personally thank you for being part of our worship service today. And I hope that you will join us again next Sabbath in our sanctuary or here on the internet. And until then, may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Have a blessed Sabbath and a blessed week.
Be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings the fall abide, God will take care of you.